righty. Last week, we really got into a different area of apologetics. Okay, we started getting into the area of logic and the area of reason and rationale, philosophy, and those sorts of things. Kind of looking at some philosophical arguments, I guess. It's not necessarily the area where we go a lot, but the areas where we don't go a lot might be the areas where we need to go, if that makes sense, because we're not as well versed in those things, right? So kind of helps to beef up that area for us. But anyway, we kind of shifted the focus from the historical point of apologetics and looking into more of these things. As we said, there's still about 5% of Americans today, at least from the 23 and 24 study, that claim to be atheists. Well, out of the 340 million that we have in this country, it's still about 17 million people. 17 million people that do not believe in God. Well, that's quite a lot. Even so, it might not be in your circle of people, but they are out there, okay? And you might come across them, all right? But so none of this stuff is going away. It's still going to be around. It's still going to be here. And I think some of those people are reachable. I do think they are. Maybe they just have not heard very compelling arguments thus far for what they've heard, okay, and why they believe what they believe. So it doesn't mean they're not reachable. Some people just have more questions than others. And again, questions aren't wrong, but let's be there and let's help them get them answered. Anyway, we had covered some discussion about the existence of God. Do you remember anything of what we discussed last week that would point to God's existence? Okay, the Goldilocks principle. What about that? Okay, yes. So the Goldilocks principle basically says things in nature, things out in the world, things on the earth, even within nature and animals and all this stuff, it just looks like it's tailor-made. It looks like it's designed very, very specifically. It's just kind of odd, not to me, but that's what the Goldilocks principle says. Okay? And then also you mentioned the design part. What did we say about design? That was actually the second argument we looked at. Yeah, design demands an intelligent designer, right? We had looked at, let's see, what was this quote? Remember this one from Kyle in that debate? Complex functional information has to have an intelligent designer. In every single instance where we know the origin or complex functional information, we know that intelligence was the cause of that. So he's saying in everything that you see, where there's information there's a cause, which that's also what we talked about. What law? Yeah, what does that say? Exactly. Yeah. Every material effect must have a cause that brought that effect into existence, right? There's something behind whatever it is that's making it go. Yeah.
How many people did you say in the United States that does not believe in God at all?
About 17 million, about 5%. Which is quite a lot.
Have you ever seen anybody just flat said that they did not believe in God? You have?
Yes, several.
Was it somebody you ran into or a public figure on like TV or something?
Yeah, one on a ski lift that I ran into when I was in school. Yep, I told you that story. Yeah.
Brad Hara debated at Westside. You guys might remember. Few years back, there were several in the audience there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's been one guy personally. I've watched a couple debates with Kyle Butt, Dan Barker, Michael Sherman. He debated. Those are recent debates. You see them. I mean, if you're on social media a lot, you see them. I follow some channels where people are like out in the public and they're just, maybe they have a sign or something that's for Christianity, something within Christianity, and people just walk by and they cuss them up and down and they tell them how much they don't believe in God and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, they're out there.
I've never seen seen personally and associated with the ones that just flat out said that they did not believe in God.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot that didn't go to church.
yeah, they're out there.
Like that, but just to come out and say that he did not believe in God at all.
Yeah,
I've never seen anybody.
yeah,
When Brad Harrod was here that Bill was talking about at West Side, the leader of that group lives next door to my mother.
Hmm.
And his wife is a member of the Presbyterian Church. So
Wow.
because he is very staunch atheist.
wow,
So that's kind of
yeah,
You know, there's
sad.
I could give you the proof for this or anything, where it came from, but there is a theory that it's built into man to worship something. And tribes they found in places that we would assume had never heard of Jehovah God will be worshiping something
sure,
because it's just built into human nature
yeah,
to worship a higher being. And we had a student from China that lived with us for a while. He was going to OU, and he said he believed in a higher being, supreme being, but
Yeah.
he didn't know who it was.
yeah,
And but now he's a believer.
yeah. Well,
And-
good.
But well, he wanted to study.
Mhm.
He said he didn't need to study with someone about all the Bible. He just needed something to get the framework of it.
Right.
He was very smart young man.
Yeah.
But he said he believed in a supreme being.
Mm-hmm.
There had to be intelligent design.
Yep. And some people are like that. They just need a little bit of guidance.
Well,
Absolutely.
and they say though that that humans will worship something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
When they kind of push their agenda, it's almost like a
Yeah. Sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's not exactly in the name of love, as they sometimes say. But anyway, do what? Ultimately, I think that's kind of at the heart of it. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, as you mentioned, Jenny Lou, the Goldilocks principle, it's one thing we talked about. You know, you take the pupil of your eye, for instance, you just think about all these things that you see in nature, like the pupil of your eye, how it constantly adjusts, right, for light. You can think about that. It lets in just enough light so where you're not constantly blinded, or it, you know, if you're in the dark, it'll open up, right? So it'll let more light in so that you can see better, stuff like that. We did talk about thermoregulation, kind of your body's natural thermostat that you have within you that works to keep you at a nice even temperature. If you get too hot, you adjust, your body adjusts. If you get too cold, if you get sick, your body adjusts, okay? If you even just think about like animals or insects and plants, I mean, look at the engineering that we see in these things. We don't necessarily think about this a lot, but if you do stop and think about it all, consider all the engineering and architecture that you might see in nature, right? Look at the symmetry that you see, the patterns that you see. I mean, right there, the honeycomb, perfect hexagonal honeycombs that bees make. You have a tail of a peacock. Those things blow my mind, how they're just like that, right, for a defense mechanism. Okay, the symmetry of a sunflower or many different kinds of flowers. The pattern you see on the skin of a pineapple. Why is it like that? Isn't that interesting? It's interesting to me. Or how fruit in general has a natural encasing that keeps all that nice juicy fruit inside so good, right? It's a protection. Why does it have that? How does it have that? It's just built like that, okay? Stripes on a zebra, stripes on a tiger, the symmetry of snowflakes, right? If you look at those in a microscope, or even a spider's web and the intricate designs those things have. I was watching some other nature show earlier with Ren. Jellyfish that live at the depths of the sea, and it fanned out, and it looked just like that. It had all these nice, just perfect stripes on it. It's like, that blows my mind every single time I look at that. when I think about God and I think about design and I think about those things. Like, it's amazing. It's everywhere. I mean, just look for it. You barely have to look for it. Okay, but there's so much that points to a cause. It points to a designer. It points to an engineer, an architect, a builder, something. Something is behind these things. There's so much. It cannot be a coincidence. It cannot be a coincidence to have this many things. You don't even have to open the Bible to see these things. And we're not even talking about what we get on the microscopic level inside your own body and how those things work, which we still don't fully understand. So pretty wild stuff. All right. Okay, but let's get into kind of what we are going to discuss for tonight. Something else that has to do with the existence of God. Okay? And Gwen, I was really hoping Justin could be here for this one, but oh well. I know he's passionate about these things. But some more things that have to do with the existence of God. This one right here, every fact has a cause. Objective moral values exist. Who has heard of this argument? Okay. Not very many of us. Okay. Well, this will be maybe enlightening, but helpful, hopefully. Okay. So, objective moral values exist. Very heated topic. One that definitely is a part of this God's existence discussion. Okay? We've got the law of causality. We have the design demands an intelligent designer. And then we have this one also. That's not the only three, but this is a big one. Okay? So what I want to do really with this, may not finish all of it tonight, but we'll wrap up next week anyway. What I want to do is just kind of go through some things that give us evidence that objective moral values and truths exist. Okay? So we make the claim that they do exist, and we say, well, that points to the existence of God. But how do we back up that claim? I'm not asking you to answer that. We're going to look at stuff, but just think through that. How do we back up that claim? You know, what things can we see, look at, or observe that supports the claim? Okay? So, hang on. We're going to go into the deep end for a minute, and then we'll come back out for some air. All right? This is the area, the philosophical points and the things where people go. You need to be aware of some of this if you start getting into a conversation with somebody that's skeptical. This is where they're going to take some of it, okay? So it's just opening our minds a little bit. All right, you might find it interesting, though. Okay, before we get all into it, we do need to define. We need to define some things, okay? So let's define this. What does this word mean? Objective. It means without bias. What else? It stands alone. What else?
Measurable. It should be able to be measured.
I thought you said miserable. Anyway, measurable. It ought to be able to be measured. What else comes to mind? An objective. Okay, your goal perhaps. Okay. Anything else?
Makes me think of subjective, how where, like as a teacher, teaching English can be very subjective, but teaching math is very
Precise.
one-way, objective, precise.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. I think we're on that. Yeah, it's basically just something that is true. It stands on its own, regardless of any opinion or what someone thinks, or if they agree with it or not. Okay? Things are the way they are because they just are. It is an objective. It is objective. Now, Kendra, subjective, as you just defined it, right? Subjective. What else do you think about when you think about subjective?
It can be relative.
It's relative. Could be. Okay.
Subject to every limit, fancy person,
Mm-hmm.
region, anything
Absolutely.
Based on personal opinion rather than on evidentiary matter.
There you go. Personal opinion or feelings. What'd you say, Doug? Okay. You're hitting all over it. That's exactly right. Subjective has along with it personal preference. Okay? It allows for opinion. It allows for one person to think this and another person to think that. Okay? That's subjective. I think Raising Cane's has better tasting chicken than Chick-fil-A. That's my opinion. Right? I think it tastes better. I didn't say the chicken quality was as good, but I think it tastes better. Anyway, I like the seasoning they put on it. Okay? But anyway, that's subjective. That's subjective. Okay? It allows for difference. It allows for disagreements. All right? So in the world, we have objectivity and we have subjectivity. Is that fair enough to say? Yeah, and we see that all the time. We have both. Okay? Now, what does this mean? What does morally, or morality mean?
Something based on a standard.
Okay. What else?
Good for you may not be good for me.
Behavior. What's good for you may not be good for me. Talk about that in a second. Okay, so a good way to be, your conduct, your character, your behavior. Yeah.
It's actually,
A conscience. What do you mean by a conscience?
That you have the ability to be able to determine
The ability to determine, perhaps right and wrong.
right and wrong, or something that may be moral or not.
Okay, something that might be or may not be moral.
Feel bad if you
and it
get
has
it wrong.
Okay,
to do with ethics too.
okay,
Doing what's right, not for any gain at all, but because it's the right thing. to do.
just because it is the right thing to do.
You gain nothing from it yourself,
Absolutely.
but I'm doing it because it's what I should be doing.
Okay, so I think we understand what this means, okay?
Is that cross cultures?
We'll talk about that in just a minute. All those words, they have to do with things that ought to be done or ought not be done. Okay? It deals with things that are right or wrong, right and wrong behavior. We've mentioned right and wrong principles, right and wrong conduct, all of those things. So if we're talking about morality and things that are moral, and if we're saying that they are objective, then we're saying that some actions are right and some actions are wrong, regardless of subjective opinion. Make sense? Okay? That there are things that stand, or they are realities, no matter what. They are innately right or they are innately wrong because they're wrong. And we've said that. That's what we just said. Okay? Now, the question is, how do we figure out the morality? You know what I mean by that? Like the standard. How do we figure out the morality, the higher morality, right? The objective truth that says this is right because it just is. This is wrong because it just is. How do we know? How do we know that there are these objective truths, and how do we know where they come from? That's what we're trying to answer. You don't have to answer that now. That's what we're trying to answer. Okay? So, I would say that these objective truths, they aren't exactly proven by a mathematical equation. Okay? But what does give us some evidence is when you have widespread consistency or widespread, let's say, recognition through time, cultures, and people, appealing to and recognizing unseen yet somehow still known standards of right and wrong. Do I need to repeat that? Okay. That felt wordy for me. So anyway, I'm trying to explain it as simple as I can. Let's think through some things. Some of those things that might point to objective moral values existing. All right? How about this one? Moral intuition. What does intuition mean? A sense, a feeling,
It's intrinsically known, almost second nature.
second nature.
But it's all based on experience.
Could be. Okay. Yeah.
Just based on what you've seen and you're like, I know that it's not right.
Okay. So another experience. Yeah.
Sometimes you can do things that are wrong and maybe not, feel like you should still do it. Some things you just inwardly know.
Okay.
Whether you, even if you do it, that was
Yeah.
wrong to do.
You're hitting all around it. Yes. Okay. Intuition, most of the time, we would say is a feeling. It is a suspicion. It is a hunch. Okay. Or perhaps an awareness or an instinct.
Maybe it keeps up with doing things.
Or that. Like consciously. Yes. Do you believe that we have it? Like, do you believe that it is a real thing? I think we do. I think we do. Okay, something like that. Yeah. Okay. And that's kind of what we're talking about with this, with moral intuition. We're talking about people having a moral intuition about them, okay? Not necessarily, though, not necessarily a feeling, but maybe a moral awareness about them. Okay? Yeah. No, I got you. Yep. So it's kind of an awareness more than it is a feeling that things that cause maybe an immediate reaction. Okay, you immediately recognize as something being wrong. All right, stuff that you don't necessarily have to prove or work through. You just know that it's wrong. Right? Things that seem to be like self-evident truths. Make sense? All right, think about this. When we have natural moral reactions to things such as slavery or murder or child abuse or trafficking and things alike, when we have those things, natural moral reactions to those things, and we say things like, that's unfair, that's unjust, that's not right, or that's wrong to do. Well, what we're doing really is saying that there is something within us, some sort of intuition, if you will, that is automatically appealing to an unseen standard that's there. You catch that? Okay? Now, that doesn't mean that, Amber, just because people have a feeling about it, that it is that it is or that it is not wrong, because feelings and emotionalism can't determine that. Yeah, that's what we're saying. That's what we're saying. Yeah. Yeah. But feelings and emotionalism cannot determine that, okay? But what we are saying is that if there is consistency in people's moral judgments and moral awareness, and people consistently say, through time, cultures, and people, if they consistently say the murder of innocent people is wrong, torture is wrong, child abuse of any kind is wrong, physical abuse of any kind is wrong, human trafficking is wrong, and people consistently say things to that like, nobody should have to die like that. Nobody should have to die like that. Or something like, man, that is just straight evil. You ever said that? Or when people look at things and say that's just not right. Whatever that is, what the person's doing, that's just not right. It's not right. That's messed up. or, nobody should act that way, or nobody should get treated that way. If you have widespread consistency like that, which there is, and there has been throughout time, cultures, and people, then there might be objective morality that exists there. Does that make sense? Okay, because some people speak of these things like that as if they are moral obligations and things that ought not be. Okay, but again, keeping in the back of our minds, where did the standard of judgment and moral awareness come from? Hey, there you are. Right on time. I knew you'd make it to this one. Anyway. But that's what we ought to keep in the back of our minds, right? I'm not asking you to answer that, but thinking about all of that. Where does all that come from? Right? Okay, so,
Separates humans from animals.
Well, that too. Yeah.
That's something that's built into the human spirit.
Right.
An animal doesn't have that. An animal with
Right.
They are doing it for food, for protection.
Instinctively.
Whatever. But
Yeah.
it's still,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so moral intuition. We're just thinking through some things here. Okay, we're not necessarily landing on anything just yet. We're just thinking through. All right, what about this one? The majority issue. Okay. Question. If the majority says something is right or wrong, does that make it so? No. Why?
Nazi Germany.
Do tell.
Well, everybody agreed that it was the right thing to do to eradicate those who were plaguing society, right? The infirm, the gypsies, Jews, whatever.
Mhm.
They're the bad ones. Everybody agreed this is the right thing to do to get rid of them.
What was the verdict?
Well, ultimately, they all stood trial for crimes against humanity.
Mm-hmm.
But
What did they break?
The previous slide, right? Like,
Yeah.
where does that standard of morality come from? So the majority could say that something's right,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then that changes. something.
Exactly.
What we do in Newcastle, right, is different than how they do things in Tulsa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So we said you all answered. You said, okay, the majority. If the majority says something is right or wrong, does that make it so? No. Okay. The majority can be wrong. The majority can be wrong. Just because the majority says this is right or this is wrong, that still doesn't make whatever it is an objective truth, does it? No. Even if the majority says so and feels that it is, it still doesn't. Now, furthermore, it's not good to operate on majority opinion either to determine what is right or wrong. Okay. For instance, the majority of Christendom in this country today believes that you can practically speak your way to salvation. Are we going to go with what majority opinion says? No. Why? Why is it wrong? Because perhaps there is an objective truth that says otherwise. Yeah, in the Bible. Okay? So no, we can't exactly go with majority all the time. Now, if something is in the majority, if something is, though, that might can lend itself to being an objective moral truth, since the majority is recognizing something. Okay? But it doesn't necessarily create a truth, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it is. Does that make sense? Okay? But the majority cannot and should not create, define, or determine morality. All right? And even if they do, or even if society says so, it still doesn't mean that they're right. And we experience many things with that in our society today. Okay? The majority issue. Okay? We're just thinking through things. Here's something else to think through. Whoop, not that. Wrong arrow. Moral subjectivity. True or false? Morals can be subjective. False? Don't do that to me. Yeah, how? That's what I'm saying. How are they subjective? Maybe it depends on who you ask the question. Right? Depends on who you ask.
Well, but even so,
That's one reason.
killing another person may be morally wrong in one circumstance, but morally right in another. So there's, and depending on context, the moral may be subjective or it may always be objective. So it depends on what moral law you're talking about and what the context is.
I suppose you could.
But if you look at homosexuality, that's
Mhm.
subjective morally to people that espouse
Right.
that belief.
Right.
To us, it would not be.
Right. Yeah. So we're just saying that it is subjective, though. Okay. We can all point that out. Morality is sometimes subjective because what I think is right, what I think ought to be, what I think should be, somebody else might think the complete opposite. Okay. Somebody else might not see something as a moral obligation like I would or you would. Okay, somebody else might not have a moral construct up here where mine is, right? Or yours is. Maybe theirs is a little bit lower. Maybe theirs is a little bit more loose, or they are a little bit more loose in their morals. Okay, what I think might be indecent for somebody to wear, that person may not think so. Okay, so what you have with morality is that people do have moral opinions that are subjective. Okay, there are different degrees of morality in people. That still is subjective from person to person. Okay, whether something is wrong or is not wrong, not everybody agrees. All right, now just because somebody doesn't agree still does not erase that there might still be an objective truth that exists. Fair enough to say? Okay. It doesn't take that away. No matter how strongly somebody feels about something or not, disagreement does not eliminate a truth. It doesn't. Okay? Just because there may be disagreement or something doesn't mean that something doesn't exist just because there's disagreement. I mean, there's a lot of disagreement about Bigfoot, but that doesn't mean he doesn't exist.
And I think that's
Come on. Were y'all paying attention or not?
There's a broad spectrum here.
Anyway, yeah,
Too. It's not all in one area. Think about going back to
very broad.
King Ahaz, Second Chronicles. People were sacrificing their children as had been done by nations around them and before them. That's pretty horrendous to most of them.
Yeah.
To go to the other end of the spectrum, and Paul writes about the Romans and Gentiles do by nature the things of God. And were they completely right with God? No, but they did many things that spoke about. There's a broad spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we'll kind of get to that one later. No, but it's you inevitably end up going there at least. But again, is there, just keep thinking back on this. Okay, is there, though, a standard higher and beyond our own thoughts and preferences and feelings? We're still, just think about that. Where does all that come from still? All right. How about this one? Culture, upbringing, and influence. You think about it. Okay, how do we determine what is an objective truth, right or wrong, when I've been raised a certain way, or I live in a culture that says this or that, and my religion teaches me this or that? How does one determine if something is objectively right or wrong when you have all of these factors and influences, right? Can you really separate yourself from those affecting how you see things? You say it's difficult. How? Why?
What time of year you think of Easter? And when you become a Christian, you don't celebrate Easter like you did when you were Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
So we have certain food that we fix because of the culture, upbringing, and influence.
Yeah, but can you ultimately separate yourself from to determine if something is objectively right or wrong? Can you? Because and given the influences that are all around you?
Well,
You think so?
there, no, we're not using the Bible to prove anything. But
Not yet, we're not.
the Bible hasn't been proven yet.
Mhm.
But there's a scripture even that says that which is not of faith is sin. And I definitely think there are things that you might do that you have no problem with. That if I did it, I would feel bad.
Right.
And if I felt bad about it, if I felt I was sinning,
Right.
then I think it would be a sin to me.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. My grandmother, we've played cards, dominoes, all that, all my life. But my grandmother she thought that was terribly wrong. And I think if we had forced her to sit down and play a game of cards with us or something like that, or we'd gone to her house and done that, I think it would have been offensive to her.
Yeah. And that kind of gets into a little bit of a different area.
That's not an absolute morality.
Right. That's kind of a personal
Yes, it's a
conscience thing. Yeah.
And your
So-
conscience only carries you as far as your knowledge.
That's true. That's true. It's a really good point, actually. But what we're saying is, can we really separate ourselves from any of all of the influences that we have in our lives? Can you really separate yourself from determining or to determine if something is objectively right or wrong? Personally, I don't think you can. I don't know that you can separate yourself, honestly. Everybody has an upbringing. Everybody has particular environments that they were raised in, cultures that they've lived in that have certain worldviews. People are involved with different religions that ultimately might affect their thinking or judgment. Okay, I don't know if you can, personally, I don't know if you can separate yourself from any of that, because behind each of us, we all have our own upbringing, and we all have the culture that we live in, and there are influences all around us that drive the way that we think. Okay? I don't know that anyone could approach morality from a complete neutral position. Okay? That's just me. But regardless, whatever kind of upbringing, I believe you still can evaluate something and say that's right or that's wrong. Yeah.
Point of clarification, I'm trying to understand your question better.
Okay.
Are you asking, can you separate yourself?
Yeah.
Or are you, in order to view morality, or are you asking, when you initially determine your moral view, is it separate from, can it be separated from your culture and upbringing? Because I think those are two different things.
I'm just really saying that I don't really think that we can completely put ourselves in a neutral position to determine if something is right or wrong. I think there's influences behind each of us that might affect some of that. Yes, it is. Which I just said, that's personal to me. Now, what I think we can do still is, regardless of any of our upbringings or whatever, I think we still can evaluate something to say that this is right or this is wrong. Or ask the question, is this right or is this wrong? I think we can still make evaluations, we can still make judgment calls, and I think it is possible to still say, yes, this is morally right, or yes, this is morally wrong. You can still make judgment calls even when even given the influences that you have. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, if you look at all of nature and it's got its ordered system where you begin, then you come back that humanity is the only creature, the only part of creation that is given choice, and thus has the dilemma.
Right. Yeah. Anyway. We can breathe now.